In Alex Garland's Debs, a young software engineer investigates the secretive development division of a cutting-edge tech company. That is like the most superficial explanation of this show. It is incredible. It's very hard to explain without watching it, so I suggest you go ahead and do that. Today, I'm with cinematographer extraordinaire Rob Hardy, who's been nominated for an Emmy. I think it's his first one. Rob, congratulations on your Emmy nomination.
Thank you.
Talk us through, where were you when you found out, what time was it when you found out that you were nominated, and what were you doing?
I was, I was back in London. It was probably about 5:45. The kids were, my little 3-year-old and 1-year-old were crawling around, trashing the living room. It was almost bath time, and I got a text from my agent, Pete Franciosa at UTA, saying, "Congratulations." And I said, "For what? This is congratulations for what? For managing to get through another day." Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, that's how I found out. And then I sort of checked the press, and FX got in touch and broke the news. So yeah, it's great. So
you weren't expecting a nomination then, perhaps?
One could never expect a nomination for anything. I mean, that's the way I see it. So yeah, it was a big surprise. Yeah. I mean, I was aware that it was in the works, the application had been made, but I wasn't expecting it, no.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that you were. And anyone familiar with Alex Garland's work knows that he's incredibly collaborative as a filmmaker, particularly with the team that keep returning to the fold to collectively bring the stories and worlds to life. You're one of those people. Talk us through the collaboration that you have with Alex and with all the other people in the crew who kind of bring his vision to life.
Well, it's actually quite an extraordinary collaboration in the sense that it's unlike any other, obviously the experience I've had of filmmaking, it varies and everybody's different, all directors are different, all filmmakers are different. This collaboration really ultimately started with Ex Machina in the sense that it's not changed, or the style of our collaboration has not changed. We always, obviously it begins with the script, but one of the things that we tend to do is to avoid referencing any other movies, shows, photographers, anything like that. It all sort of comes out of the conversations that we have, the dialogue that we have from the very beginning, and the puzzle that we have of trying to translate everything to the screen. So there's a real purity to what we do in that sense, and of course it's all led by Alex, which is great. It's not even something that we're aware of. We just sort of get on with it and do it. And that process is all about, along with Mark, obviously, and Andrew Whitehurst, our VFX supervisor, it's all about creating a sort of playground, in some senses, on which we will shoot. So it's like, what is our world, and how do we create that? And then as far as like shooting that, photographing that world, that comes much later. So we never really talk about, this shot, that shot. It's just those things happen quite organically much later on in the process. The first thing that we really want to do is create that sort of bedrock. And we've used the same approach. We used it on Ex Machina, we used it on Annihilation, and it was no different with Debs in a sense, but it was just one step further for us. Yeah.
All three projects to me came across so original. I'd never really seen, and thinking of Debs in particular, I've never really seen a lot of the visual spectacular that I was able to kind of witness when watching the show. And for example, that internal gold scalloped wall in the bunker is such a highlight from the visual aesthetic. And obviously Mark and his team had a lot to do with that, but the way that you shot it made it look really organic. And as Alex said to me a while ago, that it was breathing, which is so apt for what we were looking at and watching. Talk us through that highlight.
Well, I mean, again, we were one of the very first conversations we had about the Debs set when Mark and Misha had started to design it was, how do we light it, obviously, and how does it manifest itself on screen, in a sense that we spend a lot of time there, and we wanted to never really sort of repeat ourselves visually. So we needed a sort of hook for it. the breathing idea, again, was something that sort of developed over time. The first thing that we wanted to achieve was this idea that essentially you have this gold surrounding wall, if you like, which surrounds the entire cube itself.
Yeah.
And that the cube is lit by that gold wall. So in other words, light sort of emanates almost sourcelessly from it, which meant that we could look in any direction, and you would have this beautiful sense of silhouette, or this very soft light on faces that would be constantly shifting and changing, depending on the scene, depending on what's happening narratively. So we had it was almost like we were creating a giant light box that we had full control over, and that almost had its own sense of emotion, if you like. It responded to the inhabitants of the cube itself and whatever was going on there. So that was sort of the initial idea, and then from then on, it was just simply an idea of executing that in a way that felt aesthetically pleasing. So we toyed with ideas of different textures for the wall, how we can make it feel once light is falling onto it. How does it feel? How does it respond to that light? And what's the best texture? Should it be flat? Should it be sparkling? Should it be all of these things? And we ended up settling on this version, the version that you see now.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic because we had a lot of. I remember going up 2 weeks prior to us shooting. I say up because we shot that in Manchester, that piece. Yeah. 2 weeks prior to us shooting there to start the pre-light, and myself and my gaffer Lee Walters, once we'd fixed everything, I tend to use tungsten light a lot because I love the way it has a sort of gauzy texture to it.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of inherent softness, if you like. Anyway, we started playing with different styles of what's the word I'm looking for here? It like sort of streaming, the way the light moved, different ways in which we could create movement of the light. And we discovered that there were numerous, it was endless, the ways in which we could do it. Speeds, timings, textures, directions, everything, because I'd lit it from above and from below. And the whole thing was bouncing back into the space. So we created a library of different vibes, if you like, which I then presented to Alex, and of course it was like, Jesus, we like all of them. Which one we don't want to choose specifically 5 different looks. We want to be able to tap into everything. So we kept that entire library, and as we shot progressively over 6 weeks, we were always, like I said earlier, we were always afraid of repeating ourselves, but it transpired that we had so many options that we were never repeating ourselves. And I remember saying to Alex at first, "Oh, we got to try this. We've got to try that." And he's just like, just calm down. We've got 6 weeks. We'll get it.
Yeah.
But by the end, we were still discovering these beautiful moments. It was almost like the gift that doesn't stop giving, in a way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's like I really felt like I just could immerse myself in that all day, and that's because like it reminded me of 1917, Roger Deakins' work, in that destroyed town where the flares are kind of making the lights move across people's faces. It kind of had that vibe. Yours is different, obviously, but it made it feel so organic, and it made me also. Well, it emphasizes to me that the internals were so organic, whilst the externals were not. They were very monochromatic in their color palette, minimalist, brutalist in design. Obviously, that was intentional. But what were you doing in terms of the shooting externals to really emphasize that?
You mean shooting outside of the cube?
Yeah.
So there was always, again, that comes back to the work that we do, and in a way it's like it just simply is the way in which a photographer approach things aesthetically, and Alex and I share the same taste, if you like, and it always really is a question of taste. I know it's that simple. So whenever we're photographing, whether it's San Francisco aerials, whether it's the redwood sequoia trees and the concrete architecture of the Amaya campus itself.
Yeah.
There's always a similarity, there's always a connection. And I think that connection comes in two ways. The first is that it's a narrative connection. So the decision we make to, the decision I make to put a frame around something is always based on how does that operate in terms of the bigger picture, in terms of the entire narrative itself. How does this frame of sequoia trees connect with the interior of devs? And that connection is always an aesthetic one. So for me, in my mind, when I'm photographing those things, I know that they're connecting, and I can't say, it has to be done in such a way in order for it to connect. It just sort of does. So, and I think the second thing there is simply, like I said before, a question of taste. It's an aesthetic choice. And the way I see it is, I can only really photograph something in one way.
Yeah.
That sounds restrictive, but it's not. It's almost like, we would wander around that campus up at Santa Cruz and looking, just exploring the space, and it would start to present things. And when I say that, I just simply mean I would look at it and I could see the images present themselves rather than forcing something. And that comes back to what I was saying at the beginning, is that those conversations we have about creating a 360-degree environment, a playground, if you will, really are so important, because it enables us to then explore the space when it comes close to shooting it.
Yeah.
And we can look in any direction, and there will be images that will tell a story. And when I say images, I mean, if you simply have like two actors having a conversation, it's not just about the two actors having the conversation. It's about what that conversation is about and how that environment that surrounds them has a sort of impetus upon that. I like the idea that, for example, in a mid-shot of somebody speaking, that you feel the environment around them.
Yeah.
It's not just simply a shot of someone talking. It's multi-layered, and those sets and those locations enable that to happen. It enables us to put an emphasis on what somebody is saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple scene of the two women talking across from the table with the pen. There's a lot of really, really effective scenes for me, apart from what we've already talked about, and maybe the Amaya statue. I found that really compelling. The most compelling thing was the visualizations and seeing like Christ on the cross and things like that, especially the grainy ones, really blew my mind. What was your involvement in bringing those things to life?
Well, and again, this was a sort of like running thing. So we had a whole bunch of stuff that we were going to shoot, as far as the visualizations were concerned, that were scripted. Now, just to say that the script, when I first read it, barely changed to the point that we were shooting it, which is a testament to Alex's writing, of course. But the things that would shift and change slightly were those prescriptive moments of the visualizations themselves. Some that we knew we could achieve, others that, as we progressed through shooting, we realized they didn't have as much impact as say, another scenario. So we did, we shot all of those things, obviously, and some that were designed to be seen in a clearer way than others. So, for example, when you see the visualization, you don't actually see it in the end, but the Trump and the Russian girls in the hotel room. Let's just leave it there.
Yeah.
We did actually shoot that.
Wow.
We built a set. Yeah, we built a set, and we had quite a fun day shooting that with a Trump lookalike. But you never see it.
No.
You hear it, you never see it. And then, of course, you know, at the other end of the scale, you've got the girl that Forrest is watching 30,000 years ago. So we shot a full day of material in this incredible location up in the Lake District, the northern part of England. Yeah, so
Wow.
that was much more comprehensive. And again, we played around a lot with that. We played around with fire textures, and we spent a lot of time just enjoying that space. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're almost running out of time, but I have two non-devs related questions. Hopefully we can squeeze them in. Firstly, everyone talks about Ex Machina. It won an Oscar, and Alex, you know, he was nominated. Andrew won the Oscar. But I actually think Annihilation, to me, that was incredible. That blew my mind. The mutating landscapes, the hellscape, I call it the alien at the end. What was your highlight from working on that?
Wow, there's so many highlights of working on that. I think, for me, for the most, working with such an incredible cast, absolutely amazing cast, was a dream come true for me. There was that. The challenge of creating what was supposedly the southern states of America, but recreating that in the English countryside, and succeeding. I think we certainly felt we succeeded. That was a real highlight. So, you know, on a daily basis, just working through that story and that shoot, with, again, when things started to present themselves as you're shooting, and you look at that frame, and you're just like, you look at the scene, you're like, wow, I mean, we could be in Florida, we could be in Georgia, or where it's just, you know, it's uncanny. So that was a real pleasure. I also think, you know, shooting a sort of strange road movie was always a bit of a dream for me. I mean, you could, in a sense, call it a road movie, I suppose, in a way. Yeah, I mean, and also actually creating what would become the Shimmer, having the ability to sort of go there and not worry about what reality really is, because it was a blank canvas for us. So creating what would eventually become the Shimmer and the Shimmer effects, that challenge, but doing it organically was a real pleasure. I mean, we photographed a library of color projection into very old Panavision lenses on black, which we would then use later in the grade to place, you know, in certain specific, we would zoom in on sort of the elements of those projections, and start painting over the images with colors, and knowing that we produced that organically, and it hadn't just been produced synthetically, was also a real joy, a real achievement.
Yeah, I can imagine. My final question before we run out of time is, one of my favorite films in terms of the way they were shot was Mission Impossible Fallout. And I always say you should have been nominated for an Oscar for that one. The action scenes were amazing. The bathroom scene blew my mind. But just making Paris look so austere and crisp, I could just watch it for that alone, because I love that city. What was the hardest shot in that movie in like 30 seconds? What was the hardest shot? I know it's probably too hard to say.
Well, I think it's obvious, isn't it? It's him jumping out of the plane. I'd say that's probably the hardest shot. And also the first shot, the very first shot that we did. I can't actually remember what it was, but I can tell you it's probably the hardest one, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was a bloody good movie, really good movie. Anyway, Rob, congratulations on your Emmy nomination, and look, hopefully we'll catch up with you for your next Alex Garland production.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Rob. Thanks so much.
No worries. Everybody go to Gold Derby, make your predictions, click subscribe, and watch all of our great contender chats just like this one with Rob.